Namaste and very good morning to you all. On behalf of AuroBharati Aurobindo Society, Pondicherry, I would like to welcome you all for today's discussion on the special topic that is Indian culture and folklore, research and pedagogy by Professor Nandini Sahu. We have organized this lecture on the eve of the completion of the 75th years of India's independence and 158th birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo. This is really one of the auspicious occasions. And from the AuroBharati, one of the verticals of Sri Aurobindo Society, we are dedicated to work in the areas of Indian art, culture, and heritage. And under this series, we have organized the lecture of Dr. Nandini Sahuji. And I'm grateful that she has accepted our invitation and has spared her valuable time to deliver the talk today. And I feel very honored to introduce Madam that Sri Aurobindo Society has a lot of areas to work, like in Indian culture, youth, sustainable development, but culture has also an important part of our community. And when we talk about the culture, we find a different kind of similarities, the identities and the differences are also there. So when we talk about the folklore as a part of the oral traditions transmitted orally from one generation to another generations through sayings, stories, the ballads, songs, and the chants. And Indian culture refers to the long history of concepts, the ideas, thoughts, and beliefs, starting from the time of the Vedic period also. If you refer to Sri Aurobindo's writings and the renaissance of his he has mentioned one thing while talking about the epics. He has written the Renaissance in India and other essays on Indian culture. He clearly mentions, these epics are therefore not a mere mass of understand legends and folklore, as is ignorantly objected, but a highly artistic representation of intimate significances of life, the living presentment of a strong and noble thinking, a developed ethical and ascetic mind, and a high social and political ideal, the enclosed image of a great culture. I am on quote. So today we are very feel very privileged to have Professor Nandini Sahu for this lecture. Professor Nandini Sahu, the Amazon's best-selling author in 2022, is a major voice in contemporary Indian English literature. She has accomplished her doctorate in English literature under the guidance of late Professor Niranjan Mahanti, Professor of English, AuroBharati Santiniketan. She has been widely published in India, USA, UK, Africa, Italy, and Australia. Apart from the numerous other literary awards, she is a triple gold medalist in English literature. She has received the gold medal from the Honorable Vice President of India for her contributions to English studies in India in the year 2019. She is the author and editor of 17 books, some of them The Other Voice, The Recollection as Redemption, The Post-Modernist Delegation to English Language Teaching, The Post-Colonial Space, Writing the Self and the Nation, Silver Poems, Folklore and the Alternative Modernities, Zero Point and Selected Poems of Nandini Sahu, and many more. She is the former Director, School of Foreign Languages, and currently a Professor of English at Indira Gandhi National Open University, IGNOU, New Delhi. Her areas of research interest covers Indian literature, new literatures, folklore and culture studies, American literature, children's literature, and critical theory. She is also the chief editor and the founder editor of Interdisciplinary Journal of Literature and Language, a biannual peer-reviewed journal in English. Professor Sahu has designed multiple academic programs on cultural studies, Indian folk literature, and Indian philosophical thoughts for IGNOU and many other universities. On behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, I welcome you for your talk, ma'am. Today, Professor Nandini Sahu ji is going to deliver a talk on Indian culture and folklore, research and pedagogy. So now the floor is yours, ma'am. Namaste.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Kishor Tripathy, and the member secretary for AuroBharati, Pondicherry, and all the members of the institution, and all the participants for today's very important program on Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, the series that you have been presenting, and all the research scholars, students, participants, friends here. Very good morning. I will be talking about something very close to my heart, for folklore and culture studies, on which I have been critically engaged for past 15 years as a teacher, as a professor of English, and also as a person dealing with the endangered languages of India. I have been doing a lot of independent research on that. When Dr. Kishor Tripathi proposed that they are organizing a series of lectures and events, some of those also he shared with me from AuroBharati on Indian culture and folklore and research. I was very keen on participating in the capacity of a folklorist. And here today I will be sharing my experiences of designing and developing academic programs, and also my independent research as a folklorist, preserving and archiving dying languages of India and the world. And I think I would be contributing in my squirrel way, in my small little way, to the massive academic research, academic work that AuroBharati has been doing. Dr. Kishor Tripathi and his member, they have been doing. I would be only contributing a little bit to that through my experiences today. Thank you. And well, the abstract has already been shared. I just saw along with my biography, Dr. Tripathi has kindly shared the abstract of the paper. So I'm not going to read it out. Only I would mention a little bit that folklore is a way of life. And there was a time when folklore was museumized by a very rigid school of thought, that folklore is something very romantic out there, to be kept at a distance, to romanticize that, and to look at folklore in a more glorified manner from a distance. That was a very, very rigid school of thought in the world, and particularly in India, for quite a few decades. That is why, unfortunately, even if folklore and Indian poetics have been so very important in our understanding and in our research, still they never could come to the so-called mainstream. For many, many decades, many centuries, they could never come to the mainstream literature. They were just a part of our performative art forms, and also something very romantic, very hoary, very distant from all of us. But now we are going through a very glorious period in Indian history, where culture and folklore are given maximum importance. We are bringing those to the table. We are bringing folklore to the university tables. We are talking about Indian Natya Shastra, Indian texts, Indian Navarasas, Rasa, Dhwani, Auchitya, and all those kinds of very important things, Indian philosophies, which have massively, hugely influenced the Western critical thoughts as well. We are talking about those in our university classrooms, in our college classrooms, and our students are very interested to take up research on those areas of studies. Having said that, I would again go back to my past 15 years ago, when I joined Indira Gandhi National Open University, the world's largest university. I did a need assessment survey, and I found out that we had many kinds of academic programs. You take a name, we have that program in our university, but unfortunately, folklore and culture studies was missing as a part of our mainstream studies. That is when I proposed a PhD diploma program in folklore and culture studies in the year 2007, and then it was launched in 2009, and the students showed a lot of enthusiasm in taking up the program. And after that, I did another need assessment survey and found that the students are keen on taking folklore and culture as a part of English studies in India. So in MA English of IGNOU in the year 2018 and 19, we introduced MBG 16, which is Indian folk literature. When I introduced that, I really had to go through tough challenge is convincing different kinds of researchers that folklore is mainstream, folklore is not marginal. It was like Agni Pariksha. It was like taking tests every time at every step, that we can bring folklore research as a part of our English studies in India. And then, fortunately, in MEG 16, Indian folk literature, the students have shown a lot of enthusiasm, and thousands of students have taken up that course, which is a part of our MA English in the university, IGNOU. And again, last year in 2021-22, during COVID, when the world was going through the challenges, we became massively online, and we designed a lot of audio video material on different subjects, including folklore research. And that is when I proposed MA in Folklore and Culture Studies, MAFCS. If you go to our university website and type program guide of MAFCS, you will have clear idea about what kind of subjects and what kind of things and research have been introduced to our MAFCS, MA in Folklore and Culture Studies. And 2021, we launched the first year programs, first year courses of MA, and there are hundreds and thousands of students in that. And second year, 2022, this year, January, we introduced the second year courses of MAFCS, and the courses have covered everything related to world folklore as well as Indian folklore, the comparative analysis, and we have taken different allied disciplines like anthropology, literature, languages, gender studies, and many more, history, ethnomusicology, so many things we have included in that, which I will be discussing one by one today, how folklore research and pedagogy, it has become a part of our mainstream teaching today and research. Another very happy news I would like to share with the August audience here, that folklore has also become a part of our UGC NET syllabus. We are handling that, and I have been handling that UGC NET examination as the convener for many years now. And also that examination has become very, very important, and students are writing that exam, and a lot of placement facilities are given to the students through that UGC NET examination. So what I was trying to tell you here is folklore research has come up in a big way to Indian academia, to our research and pedagogy. And when Dr. Kishor Tripathy requested me to talk about folklore research as a part of pedagogy and teaching and research, I was extremely enthusiastic, because my students and the best brains of the country were keen on joining the program. In Indira Gandhi National Open University, when we design and develop any academic program, we do need assessment survey, and then we have the experts committee meeting where we take the best brains of the country in that area of research and pedagogy. We do not do that as a standalone course, rather we collaborate. We believe in all kinds of collaboration. So in the program MA in Folklore and Culture Studies, and also in the MEG 16 course, we have taken people who have seminal research in those areas of research in the study. And look at the National Education Policy document. Well, before I go to that, I would rather give you my research points today, that in the coming 1.5 hours, whatever time Dr. Kishor has given me, I will be talking about interdisciplinary research and folklore vis-a-vis literature, anthropology, gender studies, ethnomusicology, linguistics, psychology, and performance studies. And then I would be giving a little bit hint or ideas about the National Education Policy, the NEP document, and the importance of culture studies, language studies, and folklore thereof. And I already told you about the inclusion of folklore as a part of our UGC NET examination. I would be giving more information about that. And then folklore and culture studies as a part of our traditional knowledge system and knowledge production, which would be my area of focus. And then I would try to distinguish the thin line of distinction between folk, classical, and modern, which most of the times the researchers use interchangeably. While folklore, classical, and modern literatures have massively exchanged hands, at the same time there is a thin line of distinction which we have to understand in order to do proper research in folklore studies. And then I will tell the tales of the so-called the loser and the deshi, or the so-called winner or the margi in Indian folkloristic. And I would be giving a historical perspective of folklore and culture. And I would talk about the romantic, the nationalistic, and the formative years of Indian regional identities. Because Indian regional identities have actually contributed to our folklore. If students are attending this, I would tell them very categorically that there is nothing like Indian folk literature in English, right? Like there is Indian writing in English, there is Indian poetry in English, there is Indian fiction in English, but there is nothing like Indian folk literature in English. So then if I claim that I have taken folk literature to the level of universities vis-a-vis English studies, then how do I justify? So that is where I will be talking about the Indian regional identities and translation studies. Importance of translation would be a part of my discussion today. There are hundreds and thousands of languages in India, so many languages accepted by the Parliament of India, and also the local and the regional dialects, which have been translated, and the oral literatures have been documented. In the beginning itself, I told you that there was a period when we used to museumize and romanticize folk literature, keeping that as a part of our marginal studies. But today, we have brought them to our mainstream research through translation. If English is the window language, I don't shy away from telling here that if we translate our regional languages, our bhasha literatures, which are so very rich in their content, orality and folklore, if we translate them and bring them to our mainstream and then make them a part of our folk literature syllabi, then I think that is the most promising and most welcome factor by the government of India today through the National Education Policy. Please go through the 67 pages document of the National Education Policy. You will know how much importance is given to languages and cultures. The word language has been used 202 times, if I am correct. And the word culture has been used several times in several contexts. So this is where the importance of the folklorists, the researchers like you and me, and the translators will come to bring folklore to the mainstream. And that would be an important point of discourse today. And I'll also be talking about the Indian Indian nationalism from Sanskrit, Persian, and native ethnicities. That would be also one point of discussion today. And then let us also talk about memo culture, M-N-E-M-O, memo culture, which is memo culture or memory culture. As a part of the collective imagination of a people, we have a collective imagination in India, and memory, orality, they play a very, very important role in the making of our Indian literatures. We will also talk about that. When I talk about that, I would emphasize how the great and little traditions, or the elite and the folk traditions, are so important in the Western scenario. But if you come to the Indian scenario, or Indian folkloristic or Indian research system, you will see that there is no distinction between the Margi and the Desi, or the so-called elite and the low culture, high culture and the low culture. In the making of the Shiva Purana, if you read it carefully, you will see that the character and the narrative of Shiva is given in Sanskrit language, in the elite language, and the narrative of Sati, Parvati, has been given in the folk language, like she is addressed a chori. She is addressed like that, and her body, the body politics, the narration, the description, and the love from Sati towards Shiv, it has been narrated in folk language, which is so, so very beautiful. I'll be giving you examples also from that. Folklore is flexible, like National Education Policy is flexible. I'll be talking about the inclusivity and the flexibility of folklore research, and folklore as redemption and healing. You know, folklore has healing power. Folklore research has given multiple ways through its functionality that folklore is a redemption, folklore is healing. And in the MA in Folklore and Culture Studies that I have been talking about, we have multiple chapters on folklore as redemption, how you can cure yourself psychologically, literally, and in many more ways. One can cure himself or herself through the research and pedagogy in folklore. Personally, I have become more inclusive and I have cured myself through my folklore research. So I give a lot of emphasis to that. And then I would also be talking about the feminist, queer, and disability inclines of folklore. Look at Ashtabakra. Look at our Indian knowledge systems, our Indian mythology. There are characters, many, who have disability and who have been included as a part of our folklore research. I will be giving a little bit information about them. And also from the feminist, queer, and gender perspective, the importance of folklore studies. And then I would also talk about folklore as a road to an Indian poetics, how the future of Indian research and the future of Indian literature is hugely dependent on our folklore studies. And let us also talk about storytelling and folk tales as our pedagogical method. Storytelling is so very imperative to our Indian knowledge systems. If you remember your Dadi Nani Kahaniya, the stories told to you by your grandparents, the beautiful stories which have and also I would talk about the use of folk in teaching of English literature. Being a teacher of English literature myself, I would give a lot of importance to the teaching of English literature through folklore pedagogy, and the use of technology and archiving and documentation of folklore research is also a part of my research. And I would emphasize on folk as an alternative epistemology and folk as an alternative modernity. So these will be some of my areas of discussion today, my points of debate and discourse. Before going to that, I would also like to give a little bit information about Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which I was going through only this morning, and how I connect my research with Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Because this lecture is a part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav series, and through this very important movement or this very important ideology, the government of India is commemorating the 75th years of Indian independence. Like Dr. Kishor already quoted some very important research regarding the 75 years of Indian independence and the importance of this lecture there. And this Mahotsav is dedicated to the people of India who have been instrumental in bringing India this far in a very evolutionary and revolutionary method journey. And when I talk about that, I will mention the folk heroes or the folk characters like Jhansi Ki Rani Lakshmi Bai, Khub Ladi Mardani, Oto Jhansi Warin Lani. Everyone knows about it. I will take out some very important folk characters who have been instrumental in the bringing and the making of Azadi in India, and how today it becomes our moral, emotional, and intellectual and academic responsibility to celebrate those people, to celebrate the spirits of those people, how they have brought independence of India, and how we are responsible to carry forward that spirit of freedom among us. The official journey of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav started on the 12th of March in 2021, and to celebrate the 75 years countdown of the anniversary of the independence, and I think it will end on the 15th of August 2023. And following those and following the ideas behind that from the government of India, from our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, I'm just quoting a few things that Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav emphasizes on our freedom struggle. And then how folklore research becomes a part of the freedom struggle of India, like Bishra Munda Jayanti will be there. and so many other important characters of our folklore, which I will talk in due course of my lecture. The next idea behind Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is ideas. How folklore research emphasizes on the knowledge systems, the traditional knowledge systems and the ideas thereof. And the third concept behind Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is resolve. How we have to resolve to reach a conclusion through which our Indian culture and folklore should be enriched, should be brought forth in a more flexible way to our teaching and research. I would also talk about that. And then the next concept of Azadi Ka Mahotsav is action. What kind of action is required, is expected from you and me as the researchers from folk literature? And then ultimately, the fifth concept behind Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is achievements. What are our achievements today? In the beginning itself, I told that our achievement as a teacher or a folklorist would start with the introduction of culture and folklore studies in the university tables, and in the introduction of UGC NET examinations on folk literature kind of important subjects. So probably this is how I can give a hint to our achievements as university teachers and researchers of folklore. The National Education Policy Document 2020 is released by the Education Ministry, and it has accentuated the mounting need of higher education in India during the pandemic, during COVID, the global crisis. It became imperative that we should be ready with some alternative modes of education, and that is where online education has come into the scenario. I am very, very tech savvy, and I give a lot of importance to teaching and research through information and technology. The focus of NEP is that it adds on, it empowers, it facilitates, it doesn't impose anything anew. The key points that I have taken out from the NEP document would be emphasis on the brain-based learning. Now, what is brain-based learning? Something that is a learning forever, something that becomes a part of your system. You grow as a human being, you grow as an individual after getting that kind of education and not just a certificate. So NEP emphasizes on the brain-based learning system. It gives a lot of importance to the new trends in science and technology. Here, I would be glad to inform you that the academic programs that we offer through our universities on culture and folklore, we have students from all backgrounds, not just English literature. There are students from science, technology, medicine. One of my students in MA in Folklore and Culture Studies is a doctor from Safdarjung Hospital, and the doctor has submitted a project report on Ayurveda and Unani. Ayurveda and Unani as our traditional knowledge systems and how they have influenced our contemporary medicine research. So those kind of very interesting research has been coming from medicine, science and technology. And in MA in Folklore and Culture Studies, I have a couple of chapters which are on the use of ICT in the making of literature and folk literature, or the use of ICT in the preservation of folk literature. That is one chapter which is very important. National Education Policy gives importance to digital infrastructure and virtual spaces. So this is one virtual space that you are sharing with me now through the Zoom platform. I'm talking about my experiences as a folklorist, and you are sharing it through a virtual space. So this is a part of our pedagogy, isn't it? And technology-based solutions to the students' problems, which do not become outdated with time, is a part of our national education policy. If you record your videos, audios, and you make a part of your World Wide Web, www, then it's going to remain forever. People may not remain forever, but whatever is documented through the World Wide Web will remain with you forever. So that is also a part of my research today. Like I tell my course writers, whenever they collaborate with me, I tell them that by writing chapters, by writing material for IGNOU kind of universities, you become a part of history. What you are writing today will remain for another hundreds of years, even if you will not be there. The progeny, our people, our children, their children will read the material. So this is what National Education Policy emphasizes. And when I read the document, I was very happy and proud that we have been already doing this for last 35 years, something that the world is talking about. We have been actually doing it for last 35 years. It emphasizes on the availability of content in different languages. Well, in the beginning itself, I told you that the National Education Policy document has used the word language multiple and hundreds of times. It gives importance to the availability of content, which is literature, science, technology, medicine, and everything through our mother tongue, through our local languages, through our state languages and national language. And 17% of the English medium schools and 64% of the Hindi medium schools and 83% of the Hindi plus vernacular medium schools, they have been taken into consideration in the study. NEP doesn't impose anything about any medium. It only gives you more options. It facilitates, like I said. Article 343 of the Constitution says that Hindi is our official language, and the Clause 2 says anyway, English will continue to be the official language along with Hindi. And education of the country is planned in the most flexible way as ABC. Now, what is ABC? A, the 10 Hindi-speaking states may make all correspondence in Hindi while making the academic content available in all the constitutionally approved languages. That is A. And B, Punjab, Maharashtra, and Gujarat will correspond in Hindi while making the content available in local as well as English language. And the C point says that East, Northeast, and South India may correspond in English while making the academic content and the research material available in Hindi and local languages. NEP document has used these kind of very important and flexible research which we endorse in our universities. We have to check language depth. Now, I would share some of my experience with you here regarding language depth. In the year 2007, when I proposed PG Diploma in Folklore and Culture Studies for my universities, one of the chapters was language depth. Initially in the world, there were 6 lakh languages, and today there are only 6,000 languages. Now, what happened to the rest of the languages? This is a matter of concern. This is a matter of deep concern and worry for linguists like us. Those lakhs and thousands of languages died a natural death due to the lack of usage, archiving, and documentation. And research says that if we go like this, if we do not take enough care to document the languages, then probably in a couple of years, the 6,000 languages will be reduced to 3,000. So this is definitely very alarming. So I thought at least a few languages can be documented and archived by me and my course writers for that PG Diploma in Folklore and Culture Studies that we did in 2008 and 9. In that context, I visited many places. I tried to take interviews with the endangered and the dying language groups of India, and I had an interaction. I had discourse and dialogue with the last few speakers of some dying languages of the country. But the biggest challenge, it was very difficult to convince those indigenous groups that your languages are endangered. They will not agree to your idea that your languages are endangered. And it was really very, very difficult and challenging to convince them. But anyway, finally we could do it. And we documented quite a few endangered languages, and we made those a part of our research and teaching. And today, I have the proud possession of a few languages which are very, very rare, and a couple of speakers are left, and I'm trying to take out a book on that through my research on folk tales. So I have requested, in fact, I have convinced the last few speakers of some folk groups to tell me the stories, their folk tales, and what they have spoken to me. In the oral medium, I have documented those by giving due academic credit to those people, and then that will be a part of a book that we are planning to take out in near future, maybe this year or early next year, Forgotten Folk Tales from India. That is one book we are working on, and that will document the dying oral tales and dying languages in the form of folk tales. As I already told you, that translation, transcreation, and availability of content on law, science, technology, humanities, languages, and social sciences. These are some of the parts of our research and pedagogy in the process of claiming ourselves to be the folklorists. As I already told you, that we work with the best brains of the country. So that is how we are successful in documenting all those things as a part of our research. And there are ethnomusicologists who have also contributed to the oral written continuum and to the oral written nexus. Now, I will distinguish between the continuum and the word nexus. Now, what is continuum, what is nexus vis-a-vis orality and written literature is one point of concern for me. When you come to do folklore research or research and culture studies, you have to be very careful about a few things like intradisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and multidisciplinary research. Intradisciplinary research means working within a single discipline, which is rather passé. It has been redundant now. Very few people are actually doing intradisciplinary research today, working within a single discipline without broadening your area or your mind. Now, what is cross-disciplinary research? Viewing one discipline from the perspective of another, looking at one subject from the point of view of another. And multidisciplinary research is people from different disciplines working together, each one drawing on their own disciplinary knowledge. Like you are a student of anthropology, I am a student of literature. If we are working together, but from our different disciplinary perspectives. So that is what you call multidisciplinary research. And interdisciplinary research is very, very important, integrating knowledge and methods from different disciplines. Integrating, taking out ideas from everybody, integrating those, and using a real synthesis approach or approaches of real synthesis is interdisciplinary research. That is where folklore studies will come in. And transdisciplinary research means creating a unity of intellectual frameworks. You as a student of folklore have to create a unity of intellectual framework through your folklore research, from the lectures that you participate, from the books that you read, or from the field study, the discourse that you do. You have to be a transdisciplinary researcher. In this context, I'm reminded about my Nandini days when I was doing my PhD there. I used to travel from Kolkata to Bolpur in those local trains, and the Bol singers would come and sing. You know, they would come with those interesting musical instruments, and they would interact with people in the train, and people would offer them some money, and then they used to sing those very beautiful Bol Geet, Bol Gatha. And they talked about Maner Manush. Maner Manush, somebody who is close to your heart. Mere man ka Manush, So they talked about that Maner Manush, and then they sang those songs. And I was very keen on listening to them because of the musicality, because of the sing-song voices, the interesting music. So I was very keen on listening to them. But then ultimately I ended up recording them, and I gave them the copyright. I mentioned their names, that who is the singer of that oral song, Bol Geet, and then I recorded that, and then I translated those from Bangla to English. And my next step, my next level of research was, I found Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore was hugely influenced by the Baul singers, Maner Manush, the concept, people who are close to your heart, like Mahatma Gandhi's idea of Vaishnavajan. Who is Vaishnavajan? Someone who understands Pid Paraya, Dusre ka Pida, someone who understands the pain of the other person is Vaishnavajana. And the same person, more or less, is the Maner Manush, someone who is close to your heart, who understands your happinesses, your sorrow, your pain, and your love. And those concepts became a part of my folklore research thereof. I wrote chapters, research papers on the Baul Geet and the influence of Baul Geet, Lalan Fakir, and all those interesting and important Baul singers on Rabindranath Tagore and our contemporary Indian literature. What I'm trying to make a point here is, our folklore, our oral literatures have massively have hugely influenced our contemporary literature. Again, I will go back to MEG 15. MEG 16, I mean, Indian folk literature, where I have taken interesting and important texts from Indian literature. Not just Indian writing in English, rather from Indian Bhasha literatures. I have taken chapters from Gopinath Mohante, from Sitakant Mahapatra, and from Pratibha Ray, and from many people, where the idea of folk has been used as a part of the story. Like T. Sankar Pillai's Chemmin, the novel Chemmin, where the fishermen and their community and their folk belief systems have been the part of the love story. The love story of the seashore people, the coastal people, and the folk beliefs they have. The man goes to catch shrimp, Chemmene shrimp. He goes to the deep sea to bring fish for his lady. And the lady has to be faithful and maintain fidelity in the months and months of absence of the man. That is what is written in that folk tale, that if the woman is infidel here, then the man might drown in the sea. So those kind of folk tales, which were instrumental in the maintenance of our collective imagination of the folk and the indigenous groups, and they were a part of our novels, which have been translated or which have been already written in English. Those literatures have become a part of our Indian folk literature. And the MEG 16 course and also the MA in Folklore and Culture Studies, that is where we have contributed in the creation of a transdisciplinary research. So my contribution to bringing folklore to the university table was the creation of a course where we are creating a pool of specialized folklorists like you, who can create a place, a position for themselves in the fields of study like teaching and research departments in colleges and universities, in libraries, in museums, in archives, in historical associations, culture councils, national centers of arts, publishing houses, funding agencies, and central and state government institutions dealing with agriculture, rural sociology, extension and development, medicine and nursing, women's studies, African American studies, popular culture, English and foreign languages, literature departments as translators, interpreters, curators, musicologists, teachers, artists, performers, and many more. You look at film industry, you look at Hollywood and Bollywood and the TV channels, look at the OTT platforms that we all are so fond of today. They also have a high demand for the folklorists. Folk entrepreneurs are coming up in a big way as job creators and providers. And the folklore research that we have been doing, it aims at creating Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, independent scholars of folklore who can create jobs for themselves and for the upcoming generations rather than looking for existing jobs. So this is where folklore is coming up in a big way to create Atmanirbhar Bharat. If you ask me, how do I define folklore? It's flexible, it's inclusive, it is a way of life. Folk literature is a way of life. Folklore is a way of life. It concerns itself with the life, the habits, the behaviors, the cultural and the social conditions of communities and individuals. It is found everywhere in our everyday speech. When you say touch wood, if I tell you, oh, you look so beautiful, I say that, oh, you are so rich, you will say, oh, touch wood. Now, what is that touch wood? Touch wood has a folk tale as its background. In one of the South African folks, there is a story that if you touch wood, probably the evil eye cannot cast its evil on you. In our everyday speech, if somebody sneezes, we stop for a while. It also has a folk tale behind it. So folklore is everywhere in our speech, in our customs, in our rites and rituals. Now look at our rites and rituals. Rudali songs are there. During the death of a person, the soul will be free if a Rudali is singing in a sing-song voice, if a Rudali is crying. Rudali tradition is there in our Rajasthani folklore. So if a Rudali is crying, once I was trying to listen to a Rudali song very carefully, and I requested some Rajasthani person to translate that for me, and it is really, really meaningful. It is actually, the Rudali song is actually a prayer for the departing soul to get peace, to get redemption, to go to heaven. So that kind of a song is there in our rites and rituals. Then there are Bidai songs. If you look at our Bidai songs, which are a part of our folklore, they are women oriented, and the girls will sing those Rudali songs to their parents, in front of their parents, before departing for their in-laws. And the layered thoughts behind those songs will take you to gender studies, to gender parity, to gender equality. The woman is actually demanding, the girl is actually demanding equality in terms of her social status to her parents. She's requesting that me and my brother, both of us were born in this house, but now he will stay with you. He will enjoy all the riches that you have, and you are sending me away. Why? What mistake did I commit that you are sending me away? The girl is asking. So she's talking about gender equality. And, the mother, the parents, they are responding to her that, my dear beta, my bacha, this is the way of life. You will go to another house. You will be a queen of that house. And you will be begetter of their children. You will create a family there. And a family setup is social system, social hierarchy. So, our Bidai songs, our Rudali songs, and there are songs for every occasion. Childbirth. If a new baby is born in somebody's house, there is a song. Festivals, tales and stories, jokes and jests. Even our jokes have a folk background. Parables and artistic performances of our dance, music, and theatre. If you look at our Indian theatre, you will see that folk is very, very powerful. Folk theatre is very powerful. Varnam Varna is the Karnataki folk theatre for Shakespearean tragedies. So we have borrowed from Shakespearean tragedies, or we really don't know if Shakespearean theatre has borrowed from Indian tradition, from our Indian oral traditions. So you will find a cultural exchange if you look at folk theatre. So folk literature is highly interdisciplinary, and it is an integrated discipline. Until about the 4000 BCE, all literatures were basically folk literatures due to their orality. Writing developed in the years between 4000 and 3000 BCE in both Egypt and Mesopotamia. And the world's first calendar was written in 3132 BCE. And then thereafter, the written literature, it spread rapidly from Asia, North Africa, and the Mediterranean to the rest of the world. And the subject cannot be understood without keeping in mind the other fields of study, like anthropology, literature, gender, and most recent performance studies. We need to deeply understand these varieties of disciplines to understand folk literature. Folk literature covers verbal expressions, includes stories, epics, legends, poetry, riddles, and other narratives, the words, the signs, the names, and the symbols. Again, you go back to the 5 ideas behind Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav that I told you. They are so closely associated with this. And then we have musical expressions, including songs and instrumental music. So this is where we can talk about the ethnomusicology. Somebody told me that I read somewhere that history is written by the winner. The winner writes history. Napoleon Bonaparte, Ashoka. So all the winners, they wrote history. History is documented by them. But then what happens to the history of the common people, the so-called loser? Someone who lost in the war. What happens to his history? So his history is documented by the ethnomusicologist and the folklorist. They sing the songs of the loser, the so-called loser. I will never call anyone loser. No one is a loser in his or her life. So the story of the so-called loser who lost in the war is documented by the ethnomusicologists and the folklorists. Couple of my students are doing their PhD on ethnomusicology, and they have taken music and poetry from different parts of the world, from different battles fought in the civilizations in human history. They have taken the music from them, the orality, the oral songs, and then they have documented those. I would like to share one of my experiences here. Few years ago, one of my students, he wanted to do PhD. He came from Northeast India and he wanted to do, he came from Assam and he said, I want to do PhD under you on some Assamese folk literature texts. I gave him a couple of tasks first. You know, I'm a very hard taskmaster when it comes to research. I make you really work hard. But in the process, I enjoy, and you will definitely enjoy the research you do with me. I told him that go back and come with after 6 months by translating those 2 folk texts in Assamese to English. I will publish those. He did that. I published those 2 texts. And then I asked him to do, you know, a survey by a need assessment survey, and you know, to do a pilot survey on the folk tradition that he was talking from Assamese literature. He was talking about Vishukanya tradition in Assamese folk literature. I asked him to do some survey of the world literature wherever a Vishukanya has been used by the winner to take revenge from the opponent. You might have heard about it, or you might have even seen some TV programs where a very beautiful woman would be given wish, poison, to the sting of a snake on her tongue, and then she would be made, you know, a human bomb kind of stuff with a lot of poison in her body, and then the beautiful woman will go to the other party and seduce them with her beauty, and then she will kill them. So that was the Vishukanya tradition in our folk literatures. And surprisingly, we found this Vishukanya tradition not only in Assamese literature, that is also in Odia literature, that is in so many literatures of Indian folkloristic, and we also found that in the folklore of Indonesia, Bali, and in Africa. In African folklore also, we found creation on, you know, training of a woman by giving her poison so that she can go and take, you know, revenge from the opponents. So that kind of comparative study, by taking literary texts, by giving due credit to them, by using a lot of referencing. Students, please be very, very particular when you do folklore research. Please be careful to give the you know, reference. Follow the MLA style sheet and give proper referencing to whichever folk tradition you are using as a part of your research and pedagogy. And then ultimately, the student came up with a very outstanding contribution under my supervision for his PhD. He did a survey of Vishukanya tradition in the world with comparative analysis of Assamese literature. And then he translated 2 books from Assamese to English. And today they are available in Delhi. All over India, they are available in English. So this is how, if you are a folklore researcher or a researcher of culture studies, like our national education policy also says that we facilitate you. We give you more power. We empower you. So if you are a folklore researcher, you will be a translator. You will be a researcher by contributing interesting stuff. And also you will be utilizing Indian traditional knowledge systems. And then your contribution will be a part of history. You are not just reading whatever is already given to you from the pre-British or the post-colonial literature. Our post-colonial literatures are equally important, but you have to add to it. If we don't add anything to the civilization, then probably taking birth on this beautiful planet Earth is of no use to us. We have to contribute. We have to contribute in terms of archiving, documentation, and this is where I have accepted folklore as my window to contribute to the world, if at all, in my small squirrel way. Well, next on the folklore research, the third point is expressions by movement or incorporating movements, including dance, plays, artistic forms, rituals, and other performances, whether or not reduced to the material form. So the movements of history. If you read one of my most favorite novels, 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez, if you read that as a folklorist, from the point of view of a folklorist, you will see that he talks about 7 generations, how generation after generation, there is development in human history. These kind of texts can definitely become a part of your folklore research. And when I talk about folklore research, I must talk about the tangible and the intangible cultural heritages of the world. Now, tangible expressions, they include productions of art. So this is tangible, something that I can hold, something that I can touch and feel, right? So it includes the productions of art, drawing, designs, paintings, body painting. You do body tattoos, body paintings, carvings, sculptures, pottery, terracotta, mosaic, woodwork, metalware, jewelry, baskets, needlework, textiles, glassware, carpets, costumes, handicrafts, musical instruments, architectural forms, and written documents, written books. All these things will come under your tangible cultural property. Now, what is intangible cultural property? The knowledge system, the transference, the passing on of that knowledge system of creating that tangible form. Like look at the musical gharanas, or look at Pipli Chandua in Odisha. So that Chandua work, or so many other things all over India. A folk tradition that creates a tangible, a materialistic product, and the process, the method of transferring that to the next generation, to the progeny, so that it will survive, it will remain, it will not die a natural death. So that is your intangible cultural property or heritage. So intangible expressions, they include the creative and the cumulative intellectual activities which are characteristic of a traditional community's distinctive cultural identity and the traditional heritage that is developed and maintained by that community. Individuals and groups who have the right and the responsibility. Right means, I mean copyright. Right and responsibility to do so in accordance with the customary laws and practices. So copyright issues, legal and ethical issues related to folklore research are very, very important because they are a part of our intangible cultural heritage transference. And I will go to the background of folklore research in the world. And Dr. Kishor, how much time I have? Yeah, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can move 10-15 minutes, ma'am.
10 minutes. Okay, fine. So quickly, I'll give you the background to the introduction of folklore research in the world. Yeah. Initially, the Germans, they used the word Volkskunde, V-O-L-K-S, Volkskunde, the Swedish folk minne, and Indian lok sahitya. So these three terms are the background to the word folklore. The Germany, Volkskunde, Swedish folk minne, and Indian lok sahitya. And all of them have different meanings. But at the same time, they have a similar chain of thought talking about life of an indigenous group. While all of them certainly contributed to the clarification of the nature of folklore, at the same time, they also somehow were isolated from the main history by unifying the threads that joins jokes and myths, gestures and legends, costumes and music, oral and written literatures into a single category of knowledge. And the phases of development of folklore in India, the initial phase to the fifth phase in India, I would give you a little bit information. The Vedas, the great epics like Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the Upanishad and the Puranas, the bulky anthologies of folklore like Hitopadesha, Brihad Katha, Katha Sarit Sagar, Betal Pachishi, and Jataka tales. They were extremely vibrant and extremely important in the creation of folklore research in India. The fact that J. Grimm's had created a connection between Indian and European mythology, and Max Muller, he had detailed about it, gives you an idea that India has contributed massively to the world folklore. The study of Indian folklore became essential to the development of folklore theory in the second half of the 19th century. The diffusion theory, if you are a theorist of folk literature, if you are writing the UGC NET examination, you look at diffusion theory. I have taken multiple classes and lectures on the YouTubes on diffusion theories. You can also look at that. It talks about the interplay between oral and written versions of different literatures, and it continues to have significance for complex cultures like India, where oral and written traditions are very, very symbiotic. They are symbolic and symbiotic, the oral and the written traditions. And coming to the developmental phases, after the initial phase, the second phase, however, was the Christian missionaries. During the pre-colonial period, the Britishers wanted to understand the people of India. So they started reading the different languages and cultures and folklore of India. And this was the second phase of folklore research in India. Of course, they also studied our folklore with their specific interest of spreading Christianity, they ventured into the remote regions and collected information on rural traditional settings. The Anglo-Saxon fathers, they recorded all kinds of information of our people, habits, customs, oral traditions, and rituals about the subject. And the third phase was the philology and the field collection period in the early decades of the 20th century in the folklore research. A series of studies on the themes taken from classical stories like Jataka, Panchatantra, Hitopadesha, and Katha Sarit Sagar. It was brought out by American and Sanskrit scholars under the guidance of Morris Bloomfield. And then the next one, the fourth phase, was the field collection of oral traditions, which was not much pursued till 1950s. It marks the fourth phase of Indian folklore studies. In this phase, anthropologists and languages and literatures, the specialists, they began to record major genres of verbal folklore in the most parts, in the regions of India. And the fifth phase, it talked about the pedagogical methods of folklore during the second part of the 20th century and the early part of this century, where the researchers talked about the folklore and pedagogical methods, use of folk in teaching of literature, use of folk in technology or use of technology in folk, and folk as an alternative epistemology and folk as an alternative modernity. So today, the fifth phase of folk literature is going on, where we are teaching folklore as a part of our research in universities and the UGC NET examination. And we are talking about the oral and the written continuum and the oral and written nexus under folklore, which is also a part of our university system today. And so folklore research, it has brought new issues to our university systems today. We talk about ecofeminism and folklore. Now, what is ecofeminism? A feminist like you, me, or a feminist like Rabindranath Tagore or Premchand, or those people who have talked about women's issues with an ecological consciousness. So ecofeminism and folklore, it has become, both the subjects have become a part of our new historicism. New historicism is the parallel reading of two texts, reading of folklore and ecology and reading of gender studies together. That has created ecofeminism, eco-criticism. We are talking a lot about eco-criticism, green studies. Everyone is talking about green studies today. And then gender discourse, feminism, masculinity studies, and queer studies. It's a big challenge to be a man. A man has to go through so many challenges in his life. He has to be a good father, a good husband, a good son, a good researcher, a good teacher, good everything. So then the challenge of being a man is clearly discussed in your masculinity studies. And in that context, if you look at our characters from our mythology like Karna, if you look at the character of Karna, the son of Kunti, who was left alone due to some issues, some personal problems of his mother, then he was rejected in the Swayamvar because he was brought up by Dalits. So the characters like Karna, vis-a-vis masculinity studies from our folklore. And then queer theorists. There are characters from LGBTQ community in our folkloristic. So how they have been discussed as a part of our literary and academia. These things have been taken out from mythology, history, and folklore, and they have been presented in the university tables. If you ask me about my multiple identities as a teacher, a folklorist, and a creative writer, I am reminded about my role as a creative writer. In my book, Sita, a Poem, which is a long poem in 25 cantos, one single poem in 25 cantos, where I have deconstructed the character Sita from the Ramayana, and I have distributed her vis-a-vis contemporary men and women. I see a kind of Sita-ness in each one of you and me. So that is where I talk about the flexible, independent, forgiving, and progressive, free-thinking Sita, a character. And for that, my training as a folklorist has helped me in a multiple ways. When I started working on that book, Sita, for my long poem, my epic poem, I traveled from Nepal to Kanyakumari to Sri Lanka. I went to so many places related to the Ramayana map of the India, and I was introduced to the rich cultural heritage of the Ramayana, the folk Ramayans. I read Madhav Kandale's folk Ramayana. I read Vaidehi Savilas. I read so many Ramayans from the world and understood the different layers of the character Ramayana, and how Sita is a cult, Sita is a movement, Sita is not an independent individual. That came to me through my folklore research on the Ramayana. And then also, we have been doing a lot of research on gynocriticism. Russian protest literature and the Latmar festivals of India will be an example here. During Holi, you will see the Latmar festival. The wife will take a lat and hit the husband to make him understand, to make him feel that when he hits her with a lat, with a danda, how she feels. So that Latmar festival is actually a change of the roles, exchange of roles between the man and woman, and the woman is hitting her man with a lat, with a stick. In this context, if you do a comparative folklore research and you go to the gynocritical research in Russia, during the Women's Day celebrations, there is a carnival of women where the Russian women, they dress up like their men, and then two girls or two women will dress up as husband and wife. Suppose this is the husband and this is the wife. Of course, both of them are women. Then the woman who is dressed up as the husband would hit and misbehave, ill-treat the woman who is dressed up as the wife. And this is the silent protest. They don't talk about it anywhere. But by that kind of role play, enactment of the role, by exchanging the roles between the man and woman, they try to make their men understand that by your ill treatment towards me, this is what I feel. They play that folk theater on the stage. It's a performative art form, the gynocritical folk art form on the Women's Day celebration in Russia. You can compare that to the Latmar festival in India, where women dress up as men and hit their wife. Similarly, the same thing in the gynocritical research as a part of folklore in Russia. And then we talk about disability studies, the Ashtavakra tales. There are so many in Indian folkloristic where we talk about the disables and how their folklore is so important. We talk about environmental studies. COVID has taught us a lot of environmental studies, how we have to take care of our environment and how we have to maintain the sanctity of our environment and the world. And then next, in the folklore research, I would suggest that you should read New Historicism, which means parallel reading of two texts, and cultural materialism, means to understand the culture of a text, you have to read the oral, written, and all kinds of cultures of that text, and then you will understand the cultural materialism of a text. And then talk about folklore and multimediality, how there are different mediums, the instrumental music, the dance, the text, everything is a part of our folklore and its multimediality. And folklore and the interdisciplinarity about which I have been talking continuously last 1 hour. Folklore and anthropology, folklore and subaltern studies, and folklore as visual culture. And then the concepts of diffusion, then Benfei's migration theory, then the Egyptian school of folklore, Finnish school of historical geographical method, folklore and memory culture, folklore and protest literature, folklore and inclusivity, folklore as redemption, folklore as a healing, then syntagmatic structuralism, paradigmatic structuralism, then Vladimir Prof and the folklore of Russia, then post-structuralism and new hermeneutics, then reconstruction and post-colonialism, folklore and the vernacular traditions, then the Sanskrit, Prakrit, and Persian literary texts, and the importance of a new folk poetics. These are the things that are very important for you to understand in your folklore research so that you can contribute to the pedagogy of folklore. With this, I will stop here and I keep it open for discussions. And if you have any questions or any queries with me, or in case you want to contribute something to my folklore research, now I'm going to record hundreds and hundreds of videos on folklore studies. If anyone wants to contribute to those videos, please get in touch with me. My email ID is nandinisahu@ignou.ac.in. Please contribute your videos and collaborate with me. If you want to do your research and send those to me for publications, please feel free. Send your research to me. Be a part of my folklore research and let us enrich folklore research and culture studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nandini Shahuji. It is always a matter of great pleasure to listen from you, madam, because when I was part of the Kendra Sahitya Academy, the National Academy of Letters, we have organized some of your programs. And I hope after listening to you in one lecture, you have given the foundation of the folklore studies. I think hundreds of lectures may be organized to give a proper justice to the subject. So thank you so much. I just want to mention a few things when you told that taking birth and the life, birth and earth, and to contribute in a little squirrel's way, just like that little squirrel was doing during that Rama Setu was going on. And that gives a meaningful and purposeful to find the real beauty of life. And this is the spirit of our ancestors, those who have given this spirit of this through the literatures. Especially when you told about the folklore traditions, like you referred some of the scriptures, and we mentioned the dying languages. I must want to mention here, if you refer to the Vedic tradition, Patanjali says in his Mahabhashya, the Rig Veda had 21 branches. We have only one branch is there. Yajurveda has Ekashata, 101 branches was there. And Astonished, the Samaveda was 1000 branches. Sahasra Patma Samaveda. Right. And Atharveda had 9 branches. But in the contemporary scenario, we have only few branches. The Sakhaj, the way the folk tradition was originated, the evolution process was started when it was transmitted orally through different traditions. And as far as the oral and written records are concerned, we find a long history of this. This is really one of the unique lectures I heard. In your lecture, you had given a special emphasis on the research while focusing on the interdisciplinary, the cross-cultural studies, multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary studies. And you also focused on the critical concerns of contemporary literary research and pedagogy. This is one of the important aspects of this. And of course, this NEP, the NEP is a new module to explore that particular knowledge system and how we can apply into our life. Because as far as the traditional system of the knowledge is concerned, even if the times, they had given a emphasis on 2 concepts. The first one is the Shastra, which speaks about the theoretical knowledge, and one is the prayog, the application or the applied part of that particular knowledge. If we have that theoretical knowledge and we don't have the practical things, it is useless. And if you both are masters, like the Vidya and Avidya concept in the Upanishads also. You mentioned about the narratives in the literature, inclusivity and explicitity of Indian culture, and giving the examples from the Baul songs and writings of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and give an example of many other countries as a mean of the cross-cultural studies. I was watching one of the videos under the Intangible Cultural Heritage series, because while working with the sister organizations of the Ministry of Culture, I was part of the subgroup committee for design and development of the dossier for the Yoga as Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. And we had a team worked for 3 months approx to prepare the dossier, the videos connecting to the institutions. And I took my interest in that intangible cultural heritage things. You'll find, I will say the video, that in Turkey, there is a remote village, and the people use the sign language through the whistles. It's not like that they're communicating in 10 or 15 meters distance, even if it is 50 or 100 meters distance also, because that is a hilly area. And if they want to convey something, they use that sign language through whistles, even if their culture has also preserved through the whistle language. And when I came to know that in schools also, it is something like compulsory to learn that. Okay. So I will send that video to you. Okay. And when you mentioned that, these are really the creams of the tradition when we talk about. And these are also the important factors which you talked about. And 2 things I just want to mention, that when you focus on the history of the common man, always we have the history of the leader. but the thousands and crores of the people, those who have sacrificed, or like some of the unknown loss of identity they have, it is not properly recorded. And you had given special emphasis for the documentation, preservation, and enhancement of cultural resources. This is the module which you have mentioned. And I think these are the important factors when we talk about the research and pedagogy in academia. And our literary, we have thousands of literatures. The Rishis has given the path to feel the spirit of this Brahman. In Rig Veda, it says, when we talk about the knowledge, the question comes, what is the knowledge? It says, Jnanam, Pragyanam is Brahman, Pragyanam Brahma. The real knowledge is the Brahman. So this is a matter of great pleasure to listening from you, madam. And I hope most of the audience there from different universities and academicians, and they must have some questions or suggestions. So now the floor is open to all of you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Professor Nandini Sahu. It was an excellent lecture that I heard. I had only a small inquiry about, you had talked about Sita. Can you please give a detail of that? Could you please expand on that? You had talked about Sita and Lathamar culture. Can you please again give me more details about that?
Okay. Yeah, I talked about Sita in a different context and Lathamar in another context. The Lathamar festival is a part of folklore as protest literature. I compared the Lathamar festival of India with the Women's Day Carnival of Russia, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of Russia.
Yeah.
So in both the scenarios, the women dress up as men, and then they behave in a way that their men might be behaving with them. In a performative art form, they're making their men feel that how they feel throughout the year about them. That is one day, through a folk festival, they're actually expressing their feelings. That is one thing. And about Sita, that is one of my books. You can also Google Sita, a poem by Nandini Sahu, or you can send me a mail. I will reply. I'll send you the details of that. It's a complete book of 25 cantos I have written on Sita, the character from Ramayana. Yeah, it's my poetry collection, and it is also in the syllabus of several universities in the country and the world as a part of their MA English and MA Gender Studies, where I have deconstructed the character and I have talked about the progressive, independent, free-thinking Sita, rather than the brooding, crying, complaining. She never broods, she never complains, she has no complaint against anyone for that matter. She has accepted life in its stride. Her loneliness, when she was left alone in the Valmiki ashram, she was a mother, she was a teacher, she was a healer. She made maximum use of her life. She utilized herself for the planet Earth. So I have talked about that kind of a progressive, free-thinking character Sita. I can email the entire text, that's also available, but I can email that to you. Just send me a mail, nandinisahu@ignou.ac.in. I will reply. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nandini Sahu. I am Padma Priya, and I am a faculty in Pondicherry University in the Department of Hindi. So I have been working, I have also been working a lot on interdisciplinary areas. So it was a pleasure to listen to you, and thank you, Society, for organizing such a beautiful lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also, you will be happy to know that Sita has been translated to Hindi, and it has been also, the Hindi text has been widely accepted. Pondicherry had a seminar, a complete seminar on my text, Sita. I can also email that to you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Maybe I missed that particular event, but definitely I will follow that. I will get in touch with you for further details. Thank you. It was a real pleasure listening to you, Dr. Sahu.
Yeah, definitely get in touch with me. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, please?
Good morning. Yes, I'd like to ask a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nandini. It was really a pleasure to hear you, and the knowledge that you shared was really I'm glad that I attended this, and thank you, Tripathy ji, for inviting me to this lecture as well. I have several questions actually, and should I just ask them all, and maybe you can tackle them, all of them together, because
Yeah,
they
sure.
might.
I will try to, if I remember all the questions, or anyway, my email is very much there, but please ask the questions.
Thank you. So my first question was regarding you said that the ethnomusicologists and the folklorists sort of retain or talk about the losers. Now, usually when if the way I've heard about the way bards sing and songs are written, usually also about the winners. So could you give an example of where the loser's identity or stories retained and maintained in this tradition of folklore?
Okay, music. And next?
The next question was, I wanted to understand to what extent is folklore, does it draw its inspiration from spirituality, and to what extent is it secular? Secular in the sense of doesn't talk about things that are religious or to do with life and to do with the culture and the songs that, you know, when people are singing when going fishing or when they're working in the fields. To what extent is all this informed by spirituality, and to what extent is it secular? And the other question I'd like to ask is very specific to Sita, since you have written a poem about it. During one of my visits in Bhubaneswar, I went to this market where they were selling a lot of different saris from different places, and I met this gentleman who really left an impression on me, because he was a poet, to be honest. He could quote verses from Odia literature, and he spoke about a very specific text which deals with that part in Ramayana where Sita is asked to leave because of the dhobi comes and tells Rama that, and so he sort of banishes her from the kingdom. And to my modern mind, who is listening to all these discourses of feminism and gender identity and all of these things, I couldn't come to terms with the fact that Rama, being an avatar and a certain principle of that he was representing, a very mental principle that needed to be established back then, how and why would he listen to a subject and do that to Sita? And what was the symbolism behind that? And that's a question I have been asked a lot, because when I try to try to defend the position of Ram, I find myself a little lost as to why he would do such a thing. And is Sita's submissiveness, maybe she was equanimous and she acted from a space of samatha, and she did, accepted life in its stride, like you said. Was that a weakness or was that a strength? And what exactly happened there? Why would Ram do such a thing? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, and you have multiple questions, and also I have multiple answers. About that ethnomusicology stuff, you send me a mail, kavinandini@gmail.com. I will give you my collection, starting with the bold singers to many other singing traditions where people have talked about cultures, those interesting songs in Indian languages which have been translated to English. I will mail you quite a few of those. That is one thing. And the next one you asked about the position of Sita, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So see, my presentation of Sita in my text, Sita, a poem, which also I would like to share with you. That is my perspective of Sita as a woman and as a poet and a folklorist myself. The first fire test, even if the radical feminists blame Sita of introducing something like bride burning, but I will not agree with that. Bride burning has multiple other reasons. Sita is never the reason behind the bride burning. The first fire test, probably had I been in Sita's position as a common mortal, I would have never gone into the first fire test in the first place. I would have rejected that. Probably many of us would have rejected that. But Sita was a seer. She was a philosopher. She was the original eco-feminist. And she came to planet Earth with a purpose. And the first fire test gave her an opportunity to prove somebody wrong, somebody who pointed fingers at her, that she lived in Ravan's house for a few months. So she was, she was not a pure woman anymore. She problematized the very idea of purity and pollution by getting into fire, and she proved that person wrong, whoever pointed out. And also, as a woman myself, I feel that she had a lot of incomplete tasks for herself. Like everyone has some task to fulfill. You are here as a folklorist, as a researcher, you must have had a set of ideas in your mind that I will do these things during my lifetime. So probably she had also a set of ideas to fulfill, to set up, a few things to complete during her lifetime, like grooming her children, giving birth to children and grooming them, contributing to or some good human beings to the planet, because a woman is a creator. With all respect for women who do not want to have children, I have no problem with that. But as a woman myself, I feel that I have contributed a good human being to this planet in the form of a good child. So probably that was one of her incomplete tasks, that she thought that I have to prove this person wrong by giving one fire test and going back, begetting my children, giving them good education, good upbringing. And also she had one incomplete task of becoming a queen. Immediately after her marriage, she went to the forest. But she was born to shape the lives of many people. She had to touch lives as a queen. So she had to come back to Ayodhya to become the queen. Then she had also not completed her responsibilities as a daughter and a daughter-in-law, because she had to go to the forest immediately after her marriage. So she has so many incomplete tasks that probably she felt that she can fulfill by proving that person wrong. And then she took one fire test, came back, and she completed all her duties and responsibilities, and she was a satisfied woman. So my Sita that I have presented in this book is a very satisfied woman. She has no complaints against Ram for leaving her in the forest during pregnancy, because she looked at the bigger picture. She looked at her responsibilities towards the Valmiki ashram. She was an educationist in the ashram. She was never brooding, crying. Rather, she was a great cook, great mother, and a great teacher in the ashram. She had all those responsibilities to complete in the ashram. Once her children were 13 years old, they were so very powerful that, being trained by a mother all by herself, all alone, they were so powerful that the children could even defeat Hanuman and Ram and all of them. So who says that a single mother cannot take care of her children? She also proved that wrong. And the children were so strong that they challenged Hanuman, Ram, Lakshman, and all of them. And ultimately, when Sita was asked for a second fire test, probably what I understand as a woman and as a poet myself, she felt that all my duties and responsibilities are over to the planet Earth. I have given good human beings in forms of my children. I have fulfilled my duties and responsibilities to the subjects in the Valmiki ashram. I have completed my duties as a daughter and a daughter-in-law. I have fulfilled everything. But as a wife, if I am asked to go for a second fire test, somehow it is challenging my womanhood. So she never took the second challenge on her womanhood, because she had completed all her duties. During those first and second fire tests, she actually lived the best years of her life. If you go through the folk Ramayans and the classical Ramayans carefully, she lived the best period of her life during the first and the second fire test. That was her period of contribution. And I believe in contribution. In one of the interviews with the Parliament TV channel, somebody asked me, Madam, what so fine. They asked me what is doing. And then I said, I want to contribute to enrich the civilization by an inch when I die. So everyone wants to contribute to the civilization. Imagine if people would not have been contributing in terms of research, pedagogy, folklore, tangible, intangible contributions, making things like creating such things, then what would have happened to the society today? Where would we have been? So probably, to me, you may please differ with me if you like, but to me, Sita had to contribute tangible and intangible ways, both the ways. So she came back by giving one fire test. She proved people wrong. those who point a finger at women can be wrong. She had to prove them wrong. But the second fire test hit her self-esteem. So she never went for that and she left. That is my narrative in Sita.
Oh, that's wonderful. I wasn't aware of the second fire test. Thank you for enlightening me.
I read 300 folk Ramayans before I actually wrote my text Sita. I read the classical Ramayans, couple of them, and 300 folk Ramayans to understand the perspectives of a people. I had been to Nepal, the University of Nepal, they had invited me to launch my Sita. And when I got down at the airport, a lot of people rushed to touch my feet like there's a Sita Maya Aye. They treated me like Sita Maya. There's a Sita Aye. I said, no, I'm not Sita. I'm just a researcher of the Ramayana. But anyway, they were not ready to accept it. But during dinner, they are telling me, कि आपके राम जी होंगे बड़े आदमी बट हम अपने बिटिया अयोध्या में नहीं ब्याएंगे. So they said that कि आपके राम जी बड़े आदमी होंगे, हम अपने बिटिया वहां नहीं ब्याएंगे. Then I tried to explain it to them that look at the bigger picture. Everyone has a perspective. Though I believe in Sita-ness, but still don't be dismissive about any idea. Be inclusive. But well, people have their own thoughts and beliefs, isn't it? Yeah, and about that musicology and all that, please email me. I would like to share my research with you. kavinandini@gmail.com. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Nina.
Hello, Nina.
Ma'am, Nina, I'm from Jammu, ma'am. So nice to be interacting with you again. And as usual, you've enlightened, clarified things. Ma'am, when we're talking about myths and things like that, sometimes, you have speculated a little about Sita, that she was not. Similarly, when we have speculation like that, how do we write a paper? I mean, you were creative, you've come out with a creative work. So if I write a creative work on my speculation, yes, it might work. But if I wish to write a paper, for which I do not have actually, because for myths and things like that, you will not have proof, no? I mean, you won't have historical proof to say something. But if I wish to write a paper like that, I mean, how should I go about it? If I have an idea.
Yeah, Dr. Nina, it's a very, very pertinent question. Anyway, first of all, I must introduce you. She is a part of my MA Folklore course and she has substantially contributed to the writing of the material. And I'm glad to meet you here. Well, as far as your question goes, as a researcher of folklore, this is definitely a problem area. Making folklore research authentic or, giving references to folklore research is a very big and problematic area. You have to be very careful. So when you are doing some research on these kind of texts which are very sensitive, you have to quote, you have to authenticate from classical and the folk Ramayans which are documented. And if it is some oral literature, then also you have to give the source of the oral literature. And then you have to leave them open-ended. Never make your texts closed. Folk literature is always work in progress. Look at the folk studios. Folk studio music, ethnomusicology presented in a contemporary form in the folk studio. So folk literature is never absolute, never dismissive, never a closed text. Keep it open-ended. Always leave open areas for the future researchers to take over from where you have left. Look at the last unit. Dr. Nina, look at the last unit of our MA in Folklore and Culture Studies. The last unit talks about the future of folk poetics, which Dr. Pushpa has written. She did her research with me and she is a very, very interesting and important researcher. So she has left it very open-ended. Last 2 units towards the folk poetics. She says that folklore is never ending. Today, something that is the alternative modernity today, tomorrow that can be the mainstream. Something that is marginal today will be the mainstream tomorrow. So this is what I always talk about, folklore and the alternative modernities. It is an alternative modernity. It is an alternative belief system and thought process, right? Yeah.
Yes. So how should I mean, I'm trying to get a new idea. How should I begin my paper? I mean, how should I say that I propose to, bring out a new idea or a new interpretation of this particular episode in the Ramayana?
Maybe you can say that I want to give an alternative reading of the Ramayana, and then you can start with that.
That will be fine. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. And ma'am, part of what he was just asking, Anshul was asking, the boy who was just asking questions, he had asked you about, the secularity and the, religious connotation of folklore.
Okay.
He had asked that question. And also I had wanted to know just a little about, of course, the linguistic aspect. Different languages and areas put a different color to folklore. And that's what we are, that's what we are researching. What are the common areas and what are the stories and what are the comparative analysis. So, but ma'am, somewhere the mainstream and the dominant discourse is always, trying to brush the alternatives under the carpet. They don't want that to come up. So in your research, I mean, what do you suggest? How can one prevail a little? How can be one a little more forceful?
Okay. The fact that I prevail all over the place should prove the question wrong. That I did my PhD in English literature. I have been teaching British and American literature forever. I have been a professor of English literature since 2 decades. But then I am prevailing all over folklore. Should prove the question wrong. That is one. But that was on a lighter vein. But on a serious note, just look at the panopticon theory. Look at the panopticon. Somebody is in the center, and all over the person there are glass doors, glass windows, glass rooms from where people are watching the person in the center. So the person they might be thinking that the person in the center is actually marginalized because we are looking at him. He is widely exposed. There is no privacy for him. We are looking at that person. So that is one perspective in a panopticon. But the other point of view in a panopticon can be the person who is in the center is actually privileged to look everywhere. Just turn your head and see. Just turn your head. Being a folklorist, be the center. Let them call you the marginal. Let them call you the periphery, but you be in the center, and you look at British literature from a folklorist perspective. You look at American literature from a folklorist perspective. You look at culture studies because you dominate culture studies. You look at languages, anthropology, gender studies, and everything. There will be sometime after 5 years, which I have taken it as my assignment, coming 5 years, that folklore will be introduced in all the Indian universities, and I will be instrumental in doing it. And I want your collaboration in that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And brilliant, ma'am. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so let us decide that we are in the center, we are not in the periphery, and we have the freedom of looking at everyone through interdisciplinary research and transdisciplinary research.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, please? Vikram Bharadwaj is a good scholar. We had a lot of interactions. Bharadwaj, you have any question, Vikramji? No. Okay. Any other questions or any suggestions?
Yes, I'm sorry, that boy is back. Just a quick question.
I just want to introduce Anshulji. We met recently that we had a program day before yesterday on sriaurobindo and Mahakavi Subramanya Bharatiyars. And we had a multiple poetry recitation session, and I came to know about Mr. Anshulji.
Okay.
And he is one of the ex-Ashram students who studied in Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education, and is a dynamic fellow. Because yesterday we talked about 1 hour discussed. And when you'll meet, you'll find that I just introduced in between.
The way he is presenting himself proves that he is very dynamic. we need more such people in culture studies.
Thank you, Kishor bhai. Thank you so much. Yes, my question was to you, ma'am. You said that folklore and folk stories have healing properties or healing capacities. I'd like to know more specifically what you mean and how. Is it through the sound, the way it is recounted, whether it is the moral of the story or the story, the it conveys, or it gives you a cathartic experience. How is it healing? Could you please elaborate? Thank you.
You actually questioned and then you answered to all of them. Reading folklore is very cathartic because folklore is so close to nature and so close to human life. You know, folklore is beyond any kind of confusion. Though in some of the folk tales or in some of the folk practices, you do not find gender equality, but again, they are open-ended. They leave it to you to practice it the way you like. And look at the folk music and the folk musical instruments. They are so close to the planet Earth. They are so close to running streams, running water, to the wind, to the sea, to the streams, So folk music is very soothing, very calming, and folk medicines. One of my researchers, as I said, he submitted a thesis for this MAFCS on folk medicines. And he talked about Ayurveda and Unani, how they have a holistic healing power rather than the allopathic medicines. He himself is a doctor and he has been practicing for ever, but he has given examples and case studies how folklore and folk medicines have holistically healed people. So I'm talking in terms of medicine and then music and then calming your mind and your heart and your soul. And if you read the folk literature through the layers of their thought and their belief system, probably you can heal your mind.
Wonderful. Thank you for your answer. Thank you so much for the lecture as well. I really enjoyed it. Thank you again.
Anshul Mr. Anshul studied in Pondicherry University in the Master of Philosophy, and to experience how the study goes in the academia and other spheres.
Okay.
So, yeah. Any other questions or any suggestions?
Sir, may I mention here, Dr. Kishor, that my strong bonding with Pondicherry was through Professor Padma Shri Manoj Das sir.
Yeah.
And I had invited him a couple of times to deliver lectures on folk literature in IGNOU. And I have interviews with Manoj Das sir about folklore in Indian literature, and they are available on Google. If you Google and if you search on the internet, you will find those. And I have learned a lot from Pondicherry and of course from Padma Shri Professor Manoj Das.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other observations or any questions, or we may close? I think no questions are there, madam. So it was really a matter of great pleasure to listening from you. You touched a lot of areas, and I just want to mention something here. This AuroBharati is one of the departments which especially focuses on the Indian art and culture to do some research and the program activities, but to explore the grand cultural heritage of India and to create a love and passion for the Mother India. We are working in that spirit. And we are also connected with lots of universities, even if we have IITs also, University of IIT Madras, IIT Kharagpur, we have so official connections. And we're trying to create a strong network of scholars like you and the other people, those who have joined in this noble mission. Our main objective is to, as you mentioned, about this intangible and tangible cultural heritage practices. And we have also started a project here as Indian knowledge traditions. And we're trying to start some projects. And we hope that scholars like you can contribute into that immensely.
Sure.
And one of the Prayoga Pakshas, like the applied aspects, like such programs like this, and in the ancient Indian tradition, it was called as the Satras, discussions like that. And we are welcome all of you to kindly join. We will also collaborate in your noble mission, and I hope in a collaborative way we can do a lot of things. And when you told about this Pondicherry, I just want to say it 1 minute about how I came here. During my PhDs in 2008 and 9, I came here to collect some data for reference materials for my doctoral degree. And I stayed here for 1.5 years, and I left Delhi to do my PhD and jobs. But I had something in my mind that one day I will come back to this land. This land has its uniqueness. Earlier, it was called the Veda Puri. The tradition of Vedic learning and teaching system was going on. We have a lot of Siddhaj, those who have taken the Jivanta Samadhis. And Maharshi Aurobindo's arrival to this holy land created a different chapter, added a different chapter into the, not only in the history of India, but also the history of the world. I can say it beyond than the India and the world. So this is really a good initiative, and we look forward for your participation in some of the projects and the programs. And we will continue these discussions and the dialogues in the form of the projects and the programs, orientation things, so that the tradition, the continuity will be there. And one thing I forgot to mention when I was saying something, you mentioned about the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Like we have seen, yesterday I saw one of the artists who was doing some artwork on the streets. I just observed this fellow doesn't have any university degrees, not a professional kind of recognition, but the work he's doing, art is like just a devotion. Even if when we get a small piece of artifact and the art artifact from any of the shops on the local streets, we find how beautifully it was being made. So I hope this will give a special dimension to look after this. And we are trying to do some activities for the artists, how this art industry can be created for the sustainable things. And with these things, I think we will close the today's session, and we will continue on behalf of
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kishor. It has always been wonderful collaborating with you. I will never say no to any research that you propose. You know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So on behalf of Aurobindo Society, and on the special occasion of completion of the 100 years of 75th years of India's independence and 150 years of Aurobindo's birth anniversary, it was really a divine offering to the mother. And this was really a wonderful session to listening. With these few words, I'd like to say thanks to all of you, with a request that we will meet again for such kind of discussions and debates. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.